Welcome to Line by Line. Today, finally, we managed to get in rising podcast star AJ. Hi. And current podcast star Manuel. We analyzing a song called Best Things in Life Are Free, sung by many artists. I don't know by whom it is, so if you guys know it, just provide the name in the comments. I will attach it to Frank Sinatra, because I love Frank Sinatra most.
It was originally written for a musical back in the 1920s, I believe.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of very famous people that covered it. Frank Sinatra was a famous one, Bing Crosby. One of the famous covers was the Ink Spots.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it was very popular back in the 40s, especially around the end of the war. So, are you familiar with swing music at all?
Yeah, swing like. That's my impression.
Yes. So it was very much popularized in the swing era, surrounded a lot of other songs which were very patriotic, and also a lot of love songs that the GIs used to enjoy, written about their sweethearts or whatever. So it's very much during the World War II, like a patriotic, belonging to a patriotic era of songs.
So why did you choose that song?
It has a lot of personal significance in that I heard it a lot growing up. My grandparents, that was kind of their music when they were growing up. So I heard it a lot as I was a kid, and also by them, it reminds me a lot of them. We heard a lot of that around the house. So yeah, I've heard it since I was a kid.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. AJ, why don't you go ahead and read the lyrics to it?
Okay. Thanks so much for having me. So, do I just read the whole? Okay. The moon belongs to everyone. The best things in life are free. The stars belong to everyone. They gleam there for you and for me. The flowers in spring, the robins that sing, the moonbeams that shine, they're yours, they're mine. And love can come to everyone. The best things in life are free.
Yeah. It makes me smile and also think of my grandparents for some reason. So, Manuel, why don't you hit us off with line by line?
Okay. And the moon belongs to everyone. The best things in life are free.
Yeah.
So, again, we're starting off at night. Right? It's definitely at night. It's the most salient thing in the sky. Like your attention gets drawn to it immediately, and that's true for everybody on it, right? At least if they're at night. and so, in some sense, that's one of the few shared realities that we have.
Yeah. Like we can be in different parts of the world. We look at the sky and we see the moon with slight time adjustment, by the way it moves. But we see the moon and it's one moon for all of us, and it reflects light of one sun. And yeah, seeing that reflection is for free for all of us. It's some joy that we have in common with all our ancestors. And like it's a thing that all people who come after us will enjoy as well. And yeah, unless there is a future where the sky will be covered and you have to pay to open it up and see the moon, it will stay for free.
Awesome. Yeah, not impossible to imagine a kind of dystopia like that, where you'd have to pay to see the moon.
Oh.
Well, you have to pay for the telescope, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh yeah.
Two fun facts about the moon. One is I don't know if you guys saw it last night, but we're at a waning half moon right now, which
Oh, tell
I'm
us
very
more
grateful.
about that. What does this mean? Like, I'm oblivious.
It just means it's a half moon, which is becoming smaller. We already had the full moon, and now we're going towards the new moon.
Ah.
I enjoy moon phases. Second fun fact is that when this song was written, there was no treaty with the moon yet. The treaty to sign that the moon is truly international was in 1967. So I guess at the time it was written, we probably didn't think that we were going to get there anytime soon. I don't know, but when moon landings and such were going to happen with the space race and everything, then we signed a treaty to make sure that it truly was not owned by anyone.
Oh wow! Does this mean that moon is now belongs to somebody?
No, it's international now.
You can buy pieces, right? Like you can buy a piece of the moon.
Oh.
Maybe.
You know, there was this website that you could buy land on the moon.
Yeah, well, if you give me money, I will send you a paper that says that you own this land on the moon.
And like I can just print your stuff.
Exactly. It may be a little bit difficult to enforce, but
Dude,
yes,
do you want a piece of Pacific inside, like there at the bottom?
Yes.
I will give you a certificate. There, you own 5 centimeters of Pacific.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's also websites where you can. There's also websites where you can buy the stars or name them at least, and it might be a little bit difficult to enforce, but yes, it's possible.
Yeah, imagine people on those stars. They're like the people who like the aliens who live on those stars, and humans who bought like, oh, did you know, guys, your entire system belongs to us. We bought that star, and they're like. Oh, can you imagine somebody owns solar system? Like there is some rich alien who is like, yeah, that's my retreat. Like the entire Earth is just my holiday planet. Yeah.
Have you ever read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Of course I did.
There's that scene about how the Earth was put on the line for destruction, and you should have seen it.
Because of the highway. There is a super ultra light highway that they were building.
Yeah. Did you guys see the announcement? It was in the basement on like X Planet.
It's your fault that you did not go down to the basement and did not look at exactly that door behind the rusty thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stars belong to everyone. They gleam there for you and me. Manuel, what do you think about that line?
Well, that's just like, you guys were wrong. You can't buy stars. Like it's in the song. But yeah, like I was thinking of the moon, and in some sense the moon doesn't have its own identity because it reflects, right? So it's borrowing something, while the stars do have their own light. And we've been talking about stars in the podcast before. And the stars are the things that draw you, right? Like they're the ideals. So in some sense, it's also talking about the ideals that everybody can aspire to, that are available to everybody. And I think that's the gleaming is also talking about that, where it's making it more personal, right? It's not, oh, they're out there, right? Like they have meaning to you.
Well, that's a very beautiful interpretation.
Yeah. They gleam there for you and me. So coming back to the idea that the words of the song start in the night, and you and me would mean the singer is addressing somebody. It can be one person or it can be people who are at the concert. All of you, this moon and those stars, they gleam for you and me. But yeah, I get the sensation of this romantic feeling that starts when the sun goes down, which is interesting.
Yes, very much so. As you're talking about it, I'm also thinking about how sometimes during the war it was a very dark time, and so it could also mean symbolic darkness, but how the light could also symbolize hope, and how hope is something that we all have access to as well during dark times.
So in the dark times, light is especially valued.
Yes.
Like during the light times, light is like whatever. But in the dark times, when there is light, and if it's for free, the value is limitless.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
I have a little bit of a philosophical question.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about owning the moon and owning the stars, it's very easy to see how silly that kind of is, to think that we can own nature, especially when it's something so far away and easy to objectify. But really, what is the difference between owning the moon and owning the earth? Like, my question is, like, why is it not as equally silly to think about owning land as it is to think about owning the moon?
Well, it's an enforcement thing. If you own Earth, if you own parts of Earth, even if you like go and claim Antarctica, right? If you have enough enforcement power whereby it's legal or military power, you're able to prove that you own it, right? Like it's like animals, they divide territory by piecing on a tree, and and people do similar thing. Like they also divide territory, like yes, by paper. And then there is this enforcement thing. About the moon, I think the moment people were able to land in there, they decided, okay, now we can enforce the ownership somehow. So yeah, I think it's that part, I guess.
And it's not too silly, and I think you want to reframe ownership into stewardship, right? I think stewardship is a better way to think about it than ownership, right? Because when you own something, you also have responsibility towards it, right? So if you don't do anything for it and you own it, then you're wasting it, right? Like you're not a good steward. So I think adding in the aspect of responsibility and adding in the aspect of the capacity to actually uphold that responsibility, that makes it have way more sense.
Okay, awesome. Great answers. I have two responses. So for Nodrik, to think that ownership is about enforcement. So this is partly why I brought up the treaty that in 1967 that made the moon not be owned by anyone, because that was during like the space race between the US and the Soviet Union, but it was before the US actually got there. So by that logic, do you think it would have been okay if the US had just, like, when they got to the moon, just said, oh, well, this is ours now, like, come get us?
Yeah. But it would be logical, but I don't think it would be okay in a more moral stance. So it's definitely not okay. Like, if imagine that we are animals who cohabit the Earth planet, and why are we the ones who claim ownership of the land? I suppose bears, like there are bears who are strong, and why don't they own part of the forest, let's say, right?
They used to.
They used to, right? Like, so we are those animals who fought for it. And if it's country thing, that country claims ownership because of making a first step. Yeah, like if it's a discovery thing, like the country, we discovered it, it's ours. And people are like, but we have seen it. Yeah, but discovery means we put a foot in it. Like it's a moral debate, let's say, who gets to claim. But ownership is an illusion. at all, like completely. Like we will not, like, how long does the ownership last? And will we own it after we die? And like, there is so many questions attached to it. And best things in life are free. It's let's renounce the ownership, the having mode, and let's just enjoy life and be in the being mode, let's say. If it makes
absolutely.
sense.
No, I very much agree with you. I think that it is. I think the theme of the song would be something more so along the lines of enjoy nature as it is. But it is interesting to think about how much our culture very much justifies ownership of nature. I'm even thinking about, like, for example, Elon Musk talking about colonizing Mars, and like he's basically under the opinion that, like, if you get there, you get to decide who owns it.
It's like an uncharted territory, right? Well, people who own the moon, if you will bring from the moon very rare resources, like tritium, for example, from the moon. Like, tritium is really expensive. If you get tritium from the moon, or whatever very valuable minerals are there on Mars, right? If people who paid for it, who paid to get there, decide to fight for the ownership and like providing arguments like, we paid the ship and we got there, like it's like Spain would claim parts of America, let's say, right? Just because they paid for the ships, they came there and they set foot in there. So it's like that. It's like it's this expansion plus whoever paid to expand. And they paid, yeah, partly for discovery reason, but also partly maybe to see if there are valuable resources there.
Yeah, and I think paying isn't the right way. It's making possible, right? That's the better way to think about it. So if someone makes something possible, like it didn't exist before it was possible, and so the fact that you made it possible gives you a certain status.
All right, that brings me back to Manuel's comment about stewardshiping the earth. To think about, there are lots of, for example, resources on Earth which are made possible to exploit. Like, we have engineered ways to burn carbon that's currently hidden under the earth and release it into the air. And some would say that that might not be a good idea. Others say, well, we have the power to do it, and so we're going to do it. Do you have any comment about that?
In what sense?
That might be an example of taking ownership just because you can.
Well, like it's important, right? Because we're talking about interconnected systems. So when the complexity rises above a certain level, you can't understand your place in the system anymore correctly, right? So you at least have a responsibility to do what you can do on your level, right? So if you're wasting something, then you should consider an alternative method to do it. But when we're talking about taking responsibility, like that, there actually needs to be an entity that can actually take that responsibility and does have accurate awareness of what's going on, right? You need the right information to act, and I don't know if we have those entities. So that's a different problem.
Yeah, like people who earn massive amounts of money on coal would actually invest in suppressing parts of the information, theoretically. But I would guess that's how the machine would work.
Yes,
if it were to be set up this way. So the flowers in spring, the robins that sing, the moonbeams that shine, they're yours, they're mine.
We're currently in spring where I live. There's a lot of blooming trees, just like you have behind you, Nodrik. So it is, yes, that's something I'm very much enjoying right now is the flowers in spring. I'm amazed. I love to go around and just like smell the flowers. I'm amazed that nature can make something so beautiful and amazing, and it's for free. It's very, very beautiful.
Like I have an acquaintance of mine, and he said he can't feel joy, and that made me super sad. And each time I hear people, I go out and I feel joy. Like I feel joy. I see the flowers and I feel joy. I feel sun touching my skin and I feel joy. That makes me happy. And when spring comes, there is more of those joyful moments around, and more people are able to experience that. So even it's somehow each time I smell flowers, I already feel joy knowing that we all share that kind of thing. Spring. So I'm with you, AJ.
Absolutely. I'm also thinking spring. We were talking earlier about how this song starts out in the dark, and also spring is kind of, it's coming out of the winter, it's starting to become more light, and that's also a little bit more context to what's going on in the song, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was also thinking about light because flowers spring in sunlight. They spring also in the spring, which is the revivification of the earth, and then it's contrasted with moonbeams that are in the evening, right, like in the darkness, but they shine, right, so they're bringing a light, but they're bringing a different light. So I feel like Nodrik was talking about, right, like the spring is bringing some sort of joy, while the moon, I guess it's banishing darkness more so than bringing joy, right? It's like lifting up the darkness a little bit. And it's interesting. Well, he did it before as well, right? He's saying they're yours first and they're mine. So he's privileging the other before he's talking about himself.
Absolutely, that's a beautiful observation.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this perfect entertainer of other people. Like everything it's yours, then they're mine, because like whatever this song, it was composed to make other people feel better. Like I actually see the general idea behind that song is you said it was pre-war or like
it was originally written before the war, but it was popularized during the war.
So I do see that during the war times, artists, singers, like the most kind of the healers that people look up to, and the craft of the artist and the singer would be to bring joy to other people. And I see how the song is crafted. It's like there is cure. If you look outside, there is cure up in the sky. There is cure shining at you from the stars. There is cure if you see a flower. There is cure in light. There is cure in love. Like and it's for you, and it's for free, and you have it at your fingertips, basically. So it's amazing. Like this song is a magic spell somehow.
Yes.
I love it. Thank you for choosing it, AJ.
Oh, that's a very beautiful interpretation.
Yeah, it's well, what is a magic spell, right? Like, well, it's enchanting, right? So it's grasping your attention and trying to focus it in a certain way, but it's not trying to constrain it, right? It's not like, oh, you have to look at this flower in this way. You know, it's like there's a flower, like go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, when we're talking about togetherness as well, it's something that I think a lot of music in that time period did. And in general, I think there's a lot of culture around like brotherhood in America at that time. Togetherness, like we're really united in our efforts and a lot of care for our neighbors. A lot, yes, very much the community, based around a community, which I feel like is not necessarily something that we have as much in America today. So I think that's also a very interesting context to the song. That's something I get a lot from my grandparents, is that they have that a lot, just like looking out for each other, looking out for their community, which I'm not sure if I really experience myself in my community today. I don't know if you guys have any comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, grandparents know they live through hard times, like generally in all our planet. All grandparents, they lived harsher times than we did. They learned to value good things in life, and they wish the best for their grandkids. So, and they will teach grandkids to value beautiful things, kindness.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, like, for example, some things that my grandparents had, even like rations during the war. To me, that's a very community effort, in order that everyone takes a little bit before one person takes too much, and we make sacrifices in order for everyone to have enough. And that's something that I don't really see in America today. There's lots of people that don't have enough, and some people that have way too much, and it doesn't really make sense to me. And also even things like infrastructure. In my grandparents' day, where I grew up, they actually had much better infrastructure. My grandfather did when he was growing up, and when I did, like, he'd be able to take the bus or the trolley anywhere. Whereas when I grew up, they just didn't have any of that anymore. Only cars. So those kinds of things, that efforts in order to make things better for everyone and not just individuals, I think is something that was in that day. And it's interesting to me because in America, we think that individual rights mean that we don't have to look out for everyone, and it's seen almost, when people do say that we should do things that look out for everyone, it's seen as almost this un-American thing. Whereas my opinion is like, no, this is actually like super American. This is something that like is very traditional in American culture. We have this going back from decades ago, and it's something that I feel like maybe we lost. And it's very frustrating to me when people think this is unpatriotic, because to me it's like the most patriotic thing is to look out for your citizens, for your countrymen, for your fellow Americans. And that's my rant.
AJ, I think that we are shaping the society right now at the moment, right? Like, there are influencers who get on stage, let's say internet stage, and they promote ownership of things rather than promoting actual values. And people, humanists, who should try to promote values, they're actually out there helping people instead of going and like, look at me, I'm promoting values.
Yes.
And our society is being shaped by those influencers rather than people who should go out there and promote actual values and helping other people. Like, I heard a lot of people were actually promoting not helping other people, or like, you're not helping other people because why should we? Like, this is most of the conversations that I see on Twitter, discussions. Why should we help? Why should we care? Like, in that line. And
So I have the sense that the people who are actually changing the world are not the influencers. They're the people who do the work, and that are in people's lives. People have the capacity to realize who's affecting them and how they're affected by them. And I think there's just two games playing. There's a bunch of people who play the intellectual game online, making loud noises. And there's a bunch of people who just live their lives and they don't care about these people. These influences, right? Like they might have large numbers, but like how many of them are actually paying attention, and what are they paying attention to, right? Like those are big questions. And,
Well, I'm talking about shaping the moral values. So influencers shaping values of majority of young people. Like those people who like do actually work and think the future belongs to the next generation, let's say, right? And the next generation is looking at those influencers. They are not looking to people who produce things, who carry value and stuff. They're looking at those flashy, shiny people. And look at Generation Z, for example, at the moment. What is the current status of this generation? What values do they present? Right? So where the society is going at the moment, what do you think, and who shaped it?
I would also
parents.
argue that there might be a wider interpretation about who we're thinking about as influencers. For example, I think it might not only be models on Instagram, it might also be public speakers, like public media figureheads who...
Podcasters are influencers, that's who I mean. Like, I don't mean influencers like, look what product to buy. No, but I also mean podcasters.
Yes, absolutely.
Who are the most popular podcasters at the moment?
Yes. Without mentioning any names, I do think there are some public figureheads who promote not the values of appreciating every person, but a more brutalistic, perhaps, values about leaving behind people who are seen as less than other people for whatever reasons, mostly.
Even saying that there are people who are less than you, like even like this group is worse than you. And by influencers, I mean people who gather rallies.
Yes.
If you are able to gather a rally, you are an influencer. If you're able to gather a large Twitter following, you are an influencer. A person who has a Twitter following above 5 million is already an influencer. Yes. Like I might argue above 1 million, but yeah.
Yes, and there's often, it's not always said in such blatant terms. It's often masked and given all sorts of justifications. And one thing that really bothers me is when people like that dismiss the outcries of pain from the people who are suffering, who have justifications for dismissing that, and will mock that or make fun of that. That is something that really, really bothers me, when we're not appreciating the humanity in every person, and we're not being what we talked about earlier about the brotherhood in the community. That is something that it really deeply, deeply bothers me.
Yeah.
Without mentioning any names.
Yeah, I have to think about it more. What do you think, Mana?
Well, I think people won't go where they don't want to go. So if you're influencing something that's already there. Now, I'm not saying that influencing doesn't have effect, but I think the fact that someone is susceptible to be influenced in a certain way says a lot about that person and the values that they already hold. And I'm going to say it again, right? Like they got those values by well being raised. Like you don't get those values from the influencer.
Okay, guys, if anyone has a rebuttal, please comment in the comments. To that, I will stick to my judgment. Yeah. Next line. And love can come to everyone. The best things in life are free. So he beautifully started with night, then daylight and spring, and finished with love, like to bring it full circle, like it's yin, yang, and love. the entirety, I think. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. This to me speaks of the beauty of nature in all humanity, without judging. There are. I wanted to say this about the flowers too. It's like nature made this, and it was not engineers who made this. It was not humans who made this. And so sometimes we think that it's not worth things if it doesn't make some sort of monetary value for us. And in a similar way, sometimes we might classify humans in a certain way. And this is something that I feel is very much speaking against that, is that in every single human, there's beauty. In every single human, there's something worthy of love. And this is just a quality of nature. And yeah, I think that's really important to realize, is that there's the beauty of this light in every single person that is worthy of love.
Oh, I remember your poetry. Your poetry always was those haikus that you wrote and framed it beautifully with a drawing. They always had this visual beauty to them, handwritten. Actually, like I would imagine with a paper, like with quill, actually. But yeah, the carefulness with which you make art, the delicacy with which you write and see the beauty, right? And there was this one painting, one haiku with dragonfly in it. And dragonflies, they are connected to childhood with me. And they're everywhere. Like, I mean, everywhere. In my childhood, they were everywhere, different colored dragonflies. And they were just, and those memories are for free. And those are the best things. And this you can, the idea that you can capture that to make this situational image in one drawing, it's amazing. Yeah, those are.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you're right. The field flowers, let's say, the wild flowers that grow, poppy flowers, white flowers as well, like those. They do not grow just to satisfy the viewer. They just grow. They're there and they're beautiful.
Yes.
And yeah, those things are for us to enjoy if we can. Yeah.
I see the line as a line of hope. The love can come, right? So in some sense, it's a promise of potential. It's saying wherever you are, there's a door, and that door leads to a better place.
Hope.
Yeah, and I get the sense from it that there's an element where, well, yeah, it's the coming, right? So it's not that you find it, right? Like it arrives in a way that you're not expecting, right? Because if you're looking, you're trying to gather it from a certain place, and that's probably the reason that you're not seeing it, right? That you're trying to grasp it, you're trying to control it, but it's accessible. You just have to have the eyes to see, just like the beauty, right? Like the beauty is also a thing that you just need to have the eyes to see. And the freeness of the best things in life. I'm now thinking about freedom, right? Not in a buying sense, but in a, if you're living in freedom, then you experience the best things. So if you're not caught in this dynamic where whatever you're competing or you're fleeing, right, or you're conquering, like all of these ways of being, they're in contrast with experiencing the best things.
Yes, absolutely. As you're saying that, I'm also thinking about how the most beautiful love is something that's kind of outside of money, and if you had to buy it, it would be worth less.
That's absolutely true. I'm to promote. I always promoting people coupling up without attaching value, monetary value into another person. Let's say, because it will spoil the connection. Right? It will kind of ruin it. Like when I see happiest marriages are those two independent, absolutely individuals who chose to be together for reasons of love, not for reasons of like, it's cheaper to live together. Like, yeah. So this thing, right? If one person has to rely on the other, the purity of love will be gone. Like both have to be absolutely independent. So that's why best things in life are for free.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
As long as you can afford it.
Well, and I'd argue that there's even a higher layer, right? Like if you're dependent on any value on the partner, right? Like now there's a dependency, right? And that dependency is going to corrupt, right? Because now there's a need that needs to be fulfilled, and then it's obviously at some point not going to be fulfilled because it's impossible to maintain that state of fulfillment, and then there's going to be conflict, right? So there needs to be a total sense of independence on some level, although the fulfillment, right, like we still have needs and they still need to be fulfilled, but they have to be fulfilled on a voluntary basis.
That brings me to a question though. What values do we value in love? Like what are the things we have to rely on the other person in love? Or just on the love itself, or there is something that that needs for the love to grow and bloom like a tree. AJ?
Yes, absolutely. I'm thinking about a quote from Aristotle that I read very recently that I will not be able to say word for word, but to paraphrase, it's something about the things that we expect love is something like goodwill for the other person, something about wanting, I just like wanting good for them. I think for me personally, I think that I've tried to learn how to do that in a very unattached way. Because when it's too attached, I can expect it to happen in a certain way that may be too controlling of the other person. But yeah, I mean, there's talk about unconditional love, but for example, if the person is like trying to hurt you, like that's not love. So I think that there does need to be that expectation of wanting good for the other person. So for me, it has to start with like first you are aligned with taking care of your own self, and the other person benefits that and does not take away from that, and you also are aligned in a way that wants good for the other person as well. So there's a goodwill, and I would also add like honesty towards that as well, which may be part of it, but for me that's like that would be it, would be like goodwill and honesty.
So yeah, I would argue that the good for someone is not always what they want. So like sometimes you need to hurt them as part of loving them. So I don't think love is an unfettered pleasant thing, because life requires things of you, and like if you're getting them through love, it's better than that life shoves that through your throat. So there's an element there, and obviously when you receive things in love, right, like the way that these things sting is also going to be different. But yeah, there's an element in love where love requires you to have the right relationship with the things around you, and sometimes, yeah, you have to undergo change and change roots.
I mean, what I think about when you said something about to do what's good for someone, you might have to hurt them. For me, I would very much question what values are you using to determine what's good for that other person? Is it their own values, or is it your values which you're projecting onto them? Because if it's the latter, I would be very, very careful about that. There's a little piece of wisdom from a sacred text that I grew up with, which says, wounds from a friend which can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. And that's something that I think, like, it's holding on to the truth, which is very important. And so that is something that can sometimes be hard to hear, but we do this, we tell our friends the truth in order to benefit them. But some people, I worry that some people would, instead of, they might take their own version of the truth and project it onto the other person, which can be a very dangerous thing.
Well, yeah, that's unavoidable, right?
Well, for me, the mutual love would mean, and I mean that unconditional love, right? The one that, or I mean, conditional, but there are conditions on the conditions too. So that type of love, for me, would mean two people constantly becoming better beside each other, like they grow kind of together, they mature together, they discover things together. It's like this union. They would multiply many times when there are two of them than each of them separately. Like the sum of them would be like way bigger, like somehow. And this generates maybe some amount of pain due to the adjusting periods, but on a long run, massive amounts of joy. Like it has to be worth it.
Yes.
Also, the truth for them should not come from one partner. It should be something mutual for them, for both of them. Because if one partner sees truth in one way and he has like, I am highly moral, that's why my truth is more true than your truth. And there is a problem. Like, so I guess people who find each other, they have to find people who agree at least on some concepts of the truth. Otherwise, one person will constantly try to dominate the other person into their own version of seeing things. So yeah, but so plus love has this additional feeling of absolute beauty and happiness together. Like it has this chemical component to it, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
And
yes.
I would argue that the change requires sacrifice, right? Like voluntary sacrifice. And the voluntary sacrifice is, if you're truly doing it voluntary, right? The sacrifice is something you wish to do, right? So and this is where the imposition of the other becomes like pleasure is the wrong word. Like there's a joy in participating in that way, and I think that voluntary sacrifice is the allowing for the transformation, right? Like it's letting parts of yourself go in order to serve the other, and that's where the multiplication from 1 to 1,000, like you said, Nodrik, right? Like,
Is it a
can happen.
sacrifice though? Like sacrifice would mean you have to give up a part of yourself. But if you have to adjust yourself to something, I don't think it's sacrifice, it's just growth. Like
Yeah.
The moment one person sees it as a sacrifice, it's not. It's sacrifice is a sacrifice. The moment we name it that, like but if it's growth, I'm changing, I'm adjusting, I'm growing into that other shape. I'm shedding the skins that I outgrew, right? And there is no feeling of sacrifice if you are in love. Let's say it's just shedding those things. Like you won't regret those. That's how I see love. I don't see love like this constant. Oh, I sacrificed that for you. Now I sacrifice that for you. There, like it's,
no, but
it's not painful.
I don't think sacrifice is a negative thing, right? Like we sacrifice our time to get money, right? And we sacrifice the money to get things, right? Like there's always a giving up of one thing in order to make place for the other. And I think that's just part of life. Yeah, it's natural.
Yeah, I mean, I would also argue it depends what exactly it is that you're sacrificing. For example, the difference between something tyrannical and something which is good for growth would be, are you sacrificing the things like your faults and your vices, or are you sacrificing the things that make you who you are, your heart, your spirit, the things that you believe are right and wrong? And you should not be sacrificing the latter. You should not be sacrificing what you believe in your heart is right and wrong, what your spirit says. But there are other things, your faults, your vices, like those things are beautiful to sacrifice in the name of love. I'm also thinking this song, like I think of this in terms of fractals. Like it's true for maybe romantic relationships, but it also, if you zoom out, it can also be true like with like citizens. I'm also thinking still about how, for me, this song is a very patriotic song, pointing about the beauty in every person. And for me, something that's like core to me being American is the religious freedom. My ancestors came here from Europe to be able to worship God in a way that they were not able to in Europe. And that's so foundational to what it is to be an American, is like, you should be able to decide how you want to worship God. And that's something like, it's within your own heart. It's not something that's the government's telling you what to do. It's not like a tyrannical rule. It's something that you have to find within your own spirit. And this also ties into like the beauty of nature that we're finding in every person. This is the smell of the flowers that can't be owned. This is the beauty, the light, the love that's found in every person. And this, to appreciate that and to find that in every person, I think is the real beauty in America. To see that in every person. This is something that I get frustrated, which seems like it might have happened in the past, which I'm not necessarily seeing today, is sometimes we will impose our projections of what we believe is right and wrong onto other people. And in that, we can dismiss the humanity of other people and to think that we have a right to decide. I'm thinking again about like this piece of the moon that says that we own it. Like we can do that to other people, saying that we have a right to decide how this thing is being enforced. And for me, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that we should cultivate the nature in every person, no matter what they look like, where they were born, what they do, to appreciate that, to not squander that, to not dismiss that.
Do you feel like those things are in conflict?
What?
Well, like ownership and caring for.
Yes, sometimes. Yes, like even when we're talking about like selling time for money, something that some people have a lot more difficulty to do than other people, just because of perhaps like the way that they are born or where they are born. And sometimes I wonder if that's even something that should be required. Like, should we have to spend certain hours of our time sacrificing our life, certain sections of our life, in order to get these things which are necessary for living? Like, yeah, I mean, I guess this is going back to what I'm saying earlier, like, if we're sacrificing our faults, our vices in order for growth, that's something different than sacrificing our hearts, or what we think is right or wrong. And sometimes for some people, it does seem like we have to do the latter. We have to sacrifice what we think is right or wrong, and just in order to have the basic necessities of living. And I think that's not a good idea.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately very common, which is
Yes.
horrible. So in order to have money, people sacrificing dignity, for example,
Yes.
right? The people
Yes.
sacrifice humanity as well.
Yes.
Right? And instead of building, they destroy.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yes, I think that's really not a good idea. I think I think is where America would start to go downhill, is when we sacrifice our humanity in order for money. I think that's really exactly why I love the song so much, is that we shouldn't be doing that.
We should all start listening to grandparents who have better values or just know better. I think that there is at the moment not that many places where people can hear how can they actually help the society, right? Like, they can help themselves individually, but how can they help the society? Like, there are loud people who can rally them and tell them, this is the way you help the society against this imaginary problem. But I don't know if it's the best way to make a good change. So yeah, this song is at least helping me to feel better individually, right? There is like some hope there. Yeah.
Manuel, do you have a comment?
Well, yeah, like I think change is hard, especially when you're an individual, right? Like, you're not integrated in the community. Like how do you affect the world? And I think you start low, right? Like you start by changing the things you can affect, and you become part of a community, and then you can affect more things as a consequence of being part of that community. And make sure that that community is not oriented towards one thing, like have it be oriented towards the greater good. And that's how you get there.
Yeah, for me, I feel like there's a lot of things that aren't mutually exclusive, if it's an individual good or if it's a community good. Like, I'm again thinking about, like, public transportation is a great example of something that is good for the individual. It's also very good for the community. And it's kind of too bad that in America we lean much more towards cars, when really a lot more good could be done with better public transportation infrastructure. Don't get me started about trains.
Okay. Just to summarize, thank you, AJ, for awesome song. I love it. I would like to hear later different versions of it. I heard so far Frank Sinatra's version. It's great. Guys, please subscribe to Eiling's YouTube channel, follow her on Instagram and other media that I will provide below. Also, I encourage you to check out, subscribe, and follow Manuel's podcast. And again, thank you all for the things that are free in life, like our sponsor, Free Time. And bye.
So to reiterate, Atanka is a haiku with 2 more lines of 7, so it goes 5, 7, 5, 7, 7. So here's one that is a little bit having to do with the occasion. Earth's fertility was not made by human hands. No one could earn life. As it was freely given, so it must be freely shared.
Wow.